I had my belt looped around my fingers and my boarding pass lying flat on a gray bin, like it might tear if I breathed wrong. Shoes off, laptop out, liquids in the small clear bag. The security line moved in that slow, annoyed shuffle where nobody makes eye contact, and everyone acts like they're alone even when they're shoulder to shoulder. I kept looking up at the clock over the checkpoint. Not because it helped. It just gave my nerves something to do. This wasn't a trip I wanted. It was a trip I needed. My grandmother's probate hearing was scheduled that morning in San Miguel County, just outside Telluride. Not the part of grief where people bring casseroles, the part where a judge puts names next to property and money, and suddenly everyone remembers they have an opinion. My parents had been circling that hearing since the funeral. They kept saying things like, "We'll handle it," and "It's better if you stay out of it," in the same calm tone people use when they're locking a door. They didn't want me there. They wanted the judge to see an empty chair where my name should be, and to move forward without asking why. The bin slid forward. I stepped toward the metal detector. That's when an airport police officer in a dark uniform moved directly into my path. He didn't have the look of a bored TSA supervisor. His face was calm in a way that didn't belong in a normal travel day. "Ma'am," he said, quiet but firm. "Come with us." For half a second, my brain tried to reject it, like it was meant for the person behind me. I glanced over my shoulder anyway. No one was stepping out of line. No one was being pointed at. The officer didn't move. His partner shifted closer, angled just enough to block me without touching me. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed even. "What is this about?" I asked. "We need to ask you some questions," he said. "Right now." The line behind me went oddly silent. Not fully quiet, but quieter. The kind of hush that happens when a crowd decides something might become a story. I looked at my tray, my wallet, my shoes, my belt, my boarding pass sitting there like a small piece of proof that I belonged in the normal world. "I have a flight," I said carefully. "You need to come with us," he repeated. His partner added softer, "Just bring your ID if you have it." I reached into my carry-on slowly, like I was demonstrating each movement for a camera. I pulled out my driver's license and held it between two fingers. They walked me to a small glass-walled room off to the side. A desk. A chair bolted to the floor. Bright lighting that made everything feel slightly overexposed, like it was designed for people who needed to be watched. The officer took my ID, looked at it, and then looked at me again. "Is your name Kara Bennett?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded once and opened a tablet. The screen lit his face as he scrolled. "I'm going to read what we received," he said. "Then you can respond." I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask him to understand. I didn't try to soften anything with emotion. I've learned that when someone in authority is deciding what kind of person you are, the worst thing you can do is perform panic for them. He cleared his throat. "We got a report this morning," he said. "Caller states you're traveling today and may be a threat." The word threat landed heavy, not because it made sense, but because it was the kind of word that gave people permission to slow you down. "A threat to who?" I asked. He glanced down. "To the public," he said, and kept reading. "Caller states you made statements about making them pay, and that you might attempt to cause an incident at the airport." My skin went cold for one simple reason. I knew exactly whose voice would use language like that. My father liked vague, serious words, the kind you couldn't disprove quickly. Unstable, dangerous, risk, concern, words that made institutions feel responsible if they acted first and asked questions later. I kept my hands visible on my knees. "Who made the report?" I asked. The officer hesitated, just long enough to show me the answer mattered. "I'm not going to discuss that yet," he said. His partner watched my face like she expected me to break down, like she'd been told to expect it. I didn't give her that. "I'm traveling to a probate hearing for my grandmother's estate," I said. "If I miss it, it helps someone else." The officer's eyes flicked up. Probate? He repeated. Yes, I said. This morning. He didn't react, but his partner's expression tightened slightly, like she recognized the shape of the situation. The officer scrolled again. The caller also claims you've made concerning emergency calls, he said, and that you've been reported before. That was the tell. My parents weren't just trying to delay me, they were trying to create a record, something that could follow me into a courtroom, something that made me sound unreliable before I even opened my mouth. I leaned forward just a little. Officer, I said, calm. Pull the call log connected to this report. The actual caller information and the recording, not a summary. His partner started to speak, like she was about to tell me that wasn't always possible. It'll be there, I said, still quiet. And whoever called is counting on you not checking. The officer studied me for a moment. Then he tapped his screen and shifted in his chair. All right, he said. Let's see. He opened a different panel. I watched his eyes move as he read. At first, his face stayed neutral. Then his thumb stopped scrolling. His expression didn't turn dramatic. It just tightened in a careful way, like he'd suddenly realized he was holding something that shouldn't have been handed to him. He glanced at his partner and tilted the tablet slightly away from the glass, as if reflexively trying to keep the reflection from carrying. What? She asked quietly. He didn't answer her right away. He read the line again, like he wanted it to change. Then he looked back at me. Ms. Bennett, he said slowly. You said you're heading to a probate hearing. Yes, I said. He swallowed once, eyes dropping to the screen again. Because the call log lists the reporting party by name, he said. He lifted his eyes to mine. And it lists your father, Martin Bennett, as the caller. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't sigh. I just let the fact sit there between us, heavy and clean. His partner leaned in and read the same line for herself. Her mouth tightened. Father, she repeated, quieter now, like she didn't like saying it out loud. The officer set the tablet down, and for the first time his tone shifted from procedural to careful. Have you ever had any incidents at an airport? He asked. No, I said. Any restraining orders, protective orders, pending charges? His partner asked. No, I said again. The officer tapped another tab. He claims you made specific threats, he said. He used the phrase, she said she'd make us pay. I kept it plain. My grandmother died, I said. There's a hearing about her estate. My parents want control of it. They told me all week that if I showed up, I'd make things harder. His partner's eyes stayed steady on me. Where is the hearing? She asked. San Miguel County Probate, I said. This morning. The officer glanced at the clock on the wall. Your flight? He asked. Boarding soon, I said. He exhaled through his nose, a controlled breath, like he was making a decision. Okay, he said. We're going to listen to the call. He pressed a button on the screen, and the room filled with my father's voice. Too clear, too confident, performing concern. This is Martin Bennett, he said. I'm calling because my daughter is flying today, and I'm afraid she's going to do something. She's been unstable. She's made comments about making people pay. I'm scared for the public. I watched the officer's face as he listened. His partner didn't blink. The recording continued, and my father added, like he couldn't resist sounding helpful. She's going to a probate hearing today. She's upset about the inheritance. She's not thinking rationally. The officer paused the audio. The silence afterward felt sharper than the sound. His partner spoke first, flat and controlled. He included probate, she said. The officer nodded once, jaw tight. I kept my hands visible, voice even. He's trying to create a record, I said. So I look unstable if I arrive late or not at all. The officer looked at his partner. She gave a small nod, the kind that meant she agreed without making it dramatic. All right, he said. We're going to document what we found. and we're going to do a quick check to confirm there's nothing else attached to your name." He picked up a form from a printer tray and slid it toward me. "Voluntary statement," his partner said. "Short facts only." I took the pen and wrote carefully, keeping my handwriting steady on purpose. I was stopped at security based on a report made by my father, Martin Bennett. I deny making threats. I believe the report was filed to interfere with my travel to a probate hearing. I request preservation of the call audio and logs. I slid the paper back. The officer scanned it, then looked down at his tablet again. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "the call record also shows something else." He paused, and I felt my pulse shift, slow and heavy, like it always does right before a new problem appears. "It wasn't the first call today," he said. "It was the third." His partner leaned closer to read. "3 calls from the same number," she said quietly. 2 earlier calls dropped before dispatch answered. I held my face still, but the meaning landed. He'd called, hung up, called again, like he was rehearsing until he found someone who would take it seriously. The officer set the tablet down and stood. "That matters," he said, "because it suggests intent." He went to the door and spoke to someone outside in a low voice. I caught fragments through the glass. Probate, father, retaliatory, no criminal indicators. Then he stepped back into the room and looked at me with the kind of firmness that meant he was choosing procedure over rumor. "We're going to let you continue to your gate," he said. I nodded once, not too fast. His partner raised one finger. "Not finished," she said. "We're also giving you an incident reference for this stop." The officer printed a small receipt-like slip, tore it off, and slid it across the desk. "Keep this," he said. "It shows we identified the reporting party and reviewed the audio." I picked it up and read the number, then tucked it behind my phone case without any flourish. Then his partner's eyes narrowed at the tablet again. "Wait," she said. "There's an added note from the reporting party." The officer scrolled, read silently for a second, and then looked up at me with a different kind of caution. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "your father told dispatch you might be carrying documents related to the probate hearing, and that you might destroy them if confronted." I didn't respond right away. I just sat there with my hands in my lap, letting the thoughts settle into place, clean and cold. Because that wasn't about public safety. That was about my bag, and what I might be bringing into court. Then I lifted my eyes to his, and I said quietly, "I am carrying one thing he doesn't want seen." And the room went still again. The officer didn't rush me after I said it. He just watched my face like he was trying to decide if I was exaggerating. His partner stayed standing near the door, posture professional, hands loose at her sides. "What is it?" the officer asked. "A call log," I said. "From the night my grandmother died. Dispatch notes, timestamps, who called, who didn't." The officer's eyes shifted, small and quick, the way people react when something suddenly sounds like it belongs in a courtroom instead of an airport. His partner's chin lifted slightly. "Why would you have that?" she asked. "Because my parents filed paperwork saying my grandmother wasn't lucid when she changed her will," I said. "They're claiming she was confused, influenced, that she didn't understand what she signed." The officer nodded once, slow. "And the log contradicts that," his partner said, more like a statement than a question. "It doesn't diagnose her," I said. "It shows a timeline. It shows who was actually with her and who wasn't. And it shows what was said when someone asked for help." The officer set the tablet down again, then leaned back in his chair as if he'd just shifted from a security matter to something civil that had wandered into his workspace by mistake. He didn't look angry. If anything, he looked tired. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "I need to ask you directly. Do you have anything on you that could be used as a weapon?" "No," I said. "Any intention of causing harm to yourself or anyone else?" "No." His partner kept her eyes on me, steady. I appreciated that she didn't soften her face or try to comfort me. Comfort can feel like a trap when you don't have time. The officer tapped a few fields on the tablet. "We're going to document that the report appears connected to a civil matter," he said. "We'll note the caller is a family member and the allegations are unsubstantiated. We'll also note you were cooperative and calm." I nodded once. "Thank you," I said, and left it there. His partner stepped out for a moment and came back with a stapled packet. "This is the incident reference," she said, sliding it across the desk. "And this is the standard info sheet if you need to follow up." I picked it up and looked at it without reading every line. I just wanted the number and the time. The officer's eyes flicked toward the glass wall, toward the checkpoint, toward the slow movement of the line. "You said your hearing is this morning," he said. "Yes. And your flight is boarding." "Yes." He stood, and that mattered more than his words. It meant we were moving. "We'll walk you back," he said, "and we'll let TSA know you're clear." We stepped out of the room into the bright corridor beside the checkpoint. The noise came back all at once. Rolling suitcases, plastic bins clacking, a child whining, someone laughing too loudly. I kept my pace normal, not slow, not rushed, just purposeful. As we walked, his partner stayed beside me, slightly behind, like an escort without making it obvious. The officer moved ahead by a step and spoke to a TSA supervisor at the edge of the lanes. I didn't hear everything, but I heard enough. "False report. Father is reporting party. Listen to audio. No threat indicators. Cleared to proceed." The supervisor nodded and signaled for a staff member to retrieve my bin. My tray had been pulled aside and stacked near a counter. My belt was still on top. My boarding pass was still there, lying flat like nothing had happened. I slid my laptop back into my bag with hands that stayed steady. I laced my shoes. I looped my belt back through the loops without looking around for who might be watching. Calm isn't a personality for me. It's a decision. The officer handed me my ID back. "Keep that incident number somewhere safe," he said. "If anyone asks later, you can reference it." "I will," I said. His partner gave a small, almost invisible nod, like she was done expecting me to fall apart. Then they stepped away, and I was back in the flow of the airport like I'd been dropped into a river. I checked the departures board as soon as I cleared the checkpoint. My gait had changed. Of course it had. I started walking fast, not running, weaving through people without touching them. The terminal smelled like coffee and perfume and warm electronics. Halfway down the concourse, my phone buzzed. An email from the airline. "Your itinerary has been updated." That alone would have been normal. Gate changes happen, times shift, seats get moved, but my stomach tightened anyway because the timing was wrong, too clean, too immediate. Then my phone buzzed again. "Your flight has been canceled." I stopped walking so abruptly, a man behind me bumped my shoulder. He muttered something and kept going. I stared at the screen, waiting for my brain to catch up. Canceled. Not delayed. Not rebooked. Canceled. I opened the email and read the reason line. Canceled per customer request. Customer request. Not weather. Not maintenance. Not staffing. A request. I didn't call the hotline. Hotlines turn minutes into hours. I walked straight to the nearest service desk and waited until the agent looked up. He had the tired face of someone who'd been apologizing all morning. I set my ID on the counter and kept my voice level. "My flight was canceled minutes before boarding," I said. "I did not request that." He looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. He typed for a few seconds, clicked, then frowned. "I'm seeing it," he said slowly. "It was canceled through customer service." I didn't blink. "By who?" I asked. He hesitated, the way people do when they're not supposed to say something, but the truth is sitting right there in front of them. "It was requested by someone who answered your security question," he said. My pulse dropped into my hands. "I didn't give anyone my security answers," I said. He clicked again, scanning. "Do you have an authorized traveler on your profile?" he asked. "No," I said. "Absolutely not." He leaned closer to the monitor and kept reading the notes. "They called in," he said. "They had your confirmation code." I exhaled through my nose, slow. Of course they did. My parents didn't steal with force. They stole with access, with familiarity, with the kind of personal details that sound innocent until someone uses them as a key. "Can you see the number that called?" I asked. He glanced up again, careful. "We don't always have—" "Please," I said, still quiet. "This is interference with a court hearing. I was just stopped by airport police because of a false report filed by my father. I have an incident reference number." The agent's expression changed at the word police. Not fear, just attention. A shift from routine to risk. I pulled the slip from behind my phone case and slid it across the counter like it was the only thing I owned. He read it, then looked back at his screen with a different kind of focus. "I can see the caller ID," he said. "It's logged in the notes." He paused, then read the name out loud, almost like he didn't want to. Caller identified himself as Martin Bennett. I didn't react big. I didn't give the counter the satisfaction of a scene. I just nodded once, like I was checking a box I already expected would be checked. "What reason did he give?" I asked. The agent scrolled. "He said you're not well," he read. "That you're not safe to travel alone. That we should stop you from getting on the plane." I stood there and let the words settle. It was the same pattern as the police call. Different institution, same language. Concern used like a weapon. "I need you to reverse it," I said. "And I need the notes printed." His fingers hovered above the keyboard. "Reversing it depends on seat availability," he said. "I'll buy a new ticket if I have to," I said. "I just need to get there." He clicked through screens, moving faster now. Then he looked up. "You're lucky," he said. "There's one seat still open." Lucky wasn't what it felt like. It felt like my father had aimed for delay, not certainty. He wanted me scrambling. He wanted me to miss the hearing by an hour and arrive looking disorganized and defensive. He didn't expect me to stand in front of a service desk with paperwork. The agent printed a new boarding pass and slid it to me. Then he printed a second sheet, thin and plain, with internal notes and a timestamp, and my father's name typed neatly in a field that made it look official. He leaned forward slightly and lowered his voice. "Keep this," he said, "and tell them to flag your account for in-person verification only. No phone changes without ID." "I will," I said. He nodded once, and the nod felt like recognition, not pity. I took the papers, turned away from the desk, and walked toward the gate with my new boarding pass in my hand. My heart was doing its own private sprint, but my steps stayed measured. When I reached the gate, boarding had already started. I watched the line move forward, one person at a time, as if the world had never heard of inheritance or grief or family. I stood a few feet back and looked down at the printed airline notes again, just long enough to see the timestamp clearly. Then I slid it into my folder with the call log, and I waited for my turn to scan the pass. The scanner beeped when I handed over my boarding pass. Green, the simplest signal in the world, and my lungs finally took a deeper breath. I walked down the jet bridge without looking back, not because I was brave, because looking back is how you give someone else your time. Inside the plane, I found my seat, stowed my bag, and sat down with my folder on my lap like it was fragile. I didn't shake in public. I waited until the seatbelt sign was still on, and the cabin settled into that pre-takeoff quiet. Then I let my fingers tremble for 1 second and pressed them flat against the folder until they stopped. I opened it just enough to confirm everything was still there. The airport incident reference, the airline notes with my father's name, the call log pages in a clear sleeve, corners crisp, paper clean, evidence that did not care about feelings. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Don't do this, Kara. You're making yourself look unstable." I didn't respond. I put the phone face down on the tray table. A second buzz. "If you show up, We will tell the judge about the airport situation. That one almost made me smile, but I kept my face neutral. They were already telling the judge. That was the whole point. Then an email came through. Not from the airline, not from family. A court notification, notice of hearing update, estate of Marjorie A. Bennett. My stomach tightened as I opened it. The hearing time had been moved earlier by 2 hours. No explanation, just a new timestamp, a new start time, a clean little shift that would make me late even if the plane landed on time. That was when something in me went quiet in a different way. Not panic. Order. I looked at the time. I looked at the flight duration. I did the math without drama. Then I made a short list in my head. Step 1. Confirm what changed and who requested it. Step 2. Make sure the court knows I did not consent. Step 3. Make sure the record shows interference, not absence. The seatbelt light was still on, but the plane was taxiing. I didn't wait for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions don't show up when someone is actively trying to erase you. I called the probate clerk's office. It rang twice. A woman answered with a voice that sounded like she'd been answering calls since sunrise. San Miguel County Probate, she said. My name is Kara Bennett, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm a beneficiary in the estate hearing today. I just received a notice that the hearing was moved earlier. I'm currently in transit, and I need to confirm the schedule and whether the court will allow a remote appearance. There was a pause and the sound of typing. Ms. Bennett, she said carefully. The time change was requested as an emergency accommodation. By who? I asked. Another pause. More typing. She didn't answer immediately, which told me she knew the name mattered. It was requested by counsel for Martin and Denise Bennett, she said. I stared at the seat back in front of me, the fabric worn in small waves from thousands of shoulders. Has the court granted anything yet? I asked. She hesitated again, then lowered her voice slightly, not kind, just more precise. Your parents' attorney also filed a motion to proceed without you, she said, based on a claim that you were detained at the airport for threat-related behavior. I didn't blink. I didn't look around. I stayed still in my seat like the plane wasn't moving. Thank you, I said. I need an address for emergency exhibits. We don't accept filings by email, she replied automatically. I understand, I said. I'm not asking you to file for me. I'm asking where I can send documentation for judge review, because the motion contains a factual misrepresentation being used to deprive me of appearance. A quieter pause. Her typing slowed. Are you represented? She asked. Yes, I said. The estate counsel listed on the case is Daniel Mercer. She typed again. Mr. Mercer is on today's docket, she said. He's in the building. Please note this, I said. I was stopped based on a false report. Airport police identified the caller as my father through the call log and audio. I was cleared and released to travel. I have an incident reference number. I also have airline notes showing my father canceled my flight by phone, claiming I was unstable. The line stayed quiet for a beat. Do you have those documents in hand? She asked. Yes, I said. All right, she said slowly. You can send them to the clerk's secure exhibit inbox for judge review. It is not a formal filing, but it will be associated with the case for today's hearing. She read out the address one letter at a time. I repeated it back. Then I ended the call. The plane was still rolling toward the runway. The cabin crew was still doing their last checks. None of it mattered as much as getting the record clean. I paid for in-flight Wi-Fi the second it became available. The connection stuttered, then caught. I opened a new email. I kept the subject line plain. Estate of Marjorie A. Bennett, supplemental exhibits, travel interference, no emotion, no adjectives. I attached 3 items. A photo of the airport incident reference slip with the number clear. A photo of the airline notes showing caller identified as Martin Bennett, with the not safe to travel alone language visible. Screenshots of my mother's texts, including the line about telling the judge I was unstable. Then I wrote 5 short sentences. each one factual, each one easy to read. I deny making threats or engaging in criminal conduct. Airport police stop was initiated by a false report filed by my father. Officers identified him through the call log and audio and cleared me to travel. My flight was canceled minutes before boarding by my father calling customer service and answering security questions. The motion to proceed without me relies on false statements, and I request remote appearance or continuation until I arrive. I read it once. I removed anything that sounded like an argument. I left only what could be verified. Then I hit send. The Wi-Fi wheel spun long enough to make my palms damp. I kept my hands still on the folder and watched the little loading circle like it could decide my day. Then the message went through. And for the first time since I reached the airport that morning, I felt the leverage settle into place. Not victory, just documentation that could not be talked over. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a reply from an address I didn't recognize. No greeting, no sympathy, just one sentence. The judge has received your exhibits and will review the motion at the start of the hearing. Please remain available by phone. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down, face up this time, and waited. I didn't celebrate the clerk's message. I didn't lean back like it was solved. A judge receiving something and a judge relying on it are two different things. So I treated it like a checklist, not a comfort. I turned my phone to airplane mode for 2 seconds, then back, just to force the connection to reset. The Wi-Fi steadied again. Then I called Daniel Mercer. He picked up on the first ring, voice low, like he was already standing somewhere that required quiet. "Kara," he said. No greeting, no small talk. "Tell me where you are." "On the plane," I said. "They moved the hearing earlier and filed a motion to proceed without me. They're claiming I was detained for threat-related behavior." There was a pause. I heard paper shift on his end, like he was looking at something in real time. "I just saw it," he said. "They filed it with a declaration from their attorney's office. No police report attached." "Because there isn't one," I said. "I know," he replied, and his tone cooled into something sharper. "Did you send proof?" "Yes," I said. "To the clerk's secure exhibit inbox, incident reference, airline notes, and texts." "Good," he said. "Stay reachable. I'm walking into the courtroom now." I watched the window beside me, clouds sliding past in slow layers, like the world didn't care what families did to each other. "Can the judge let me appear by phone?" I asked. "He can," Mercer said. "He doesn't have to, but judges don't like being used, especially when the interference is documented." Used. That word mattered. It meant I wasn't asking for sympathy. I was pointing to a process being manipulated. Mercer continued. "They're also asking to be appointed temporary personal representatives today. So they can control everything immediately," I said. "Yes," he replied. "And they want it signed while you're not there." I kept my voice even. "Stop it." "I intend to," he said. "But I need one more thing from you. The dispatch log you mentioned. Do you have it with you?" "Yes," I said. "Printed." "Then I want it in the judge's hands," he said. "Now, if possible. Photos, clear enough to read. Include the case number and the timestamp." I opened my folder again and pulled out the call log packet. It was thicker than it looked, pages clipped and sleeved, the top page labeled with a dispatch ID and a date. I flattened it on the tray table like I was preparing a presentation, not fighting for my place in a family. My hands didn't shake. That was the part my parents never understood. I didn't stay calm because I was fine. I stayed calm because calm keeps you precise. I took photos page by page. I zoomed just enough to make the text readable, not so much that the identifiers got cut off. One page had the timestamp of the 911 call. One page had the address. One page had the notes typed by a dispatcher who had no reason to lie for anyone. And there, in the middle of the small, blocky text, was the detail that had been sitting in my chest since I first read it. Not poetic, not dramatic, just a line that told a story without meaning to. I didn't linger on it. I didn't let myself feel it yet. I just captured it, clearly, and moved on. When I finished, I opened a new email to the clerk's exhibit inbox and copied Mercer. I kept the subject line plain again. Estate of Marjorie A. Bennett, supplemental exhibit, CAD log photos. Then I added a short note. Attached are photos of the dispatch log and notes from the night of Marjorie Bennett's emergency call. Identifiers and timestamps are visible. That was it. No argument, no commentary. I sent it. The loading circle spun. I watched it like it was a heartbeat monitor. Then it went through. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A reply from the clerk. Still no greeting. The judge has reviewed your exhibits and is considering the motion at the start of the hearing. Please remain available by phone. I read that once, then again, slower. Not because I didn't understand, because I wanted my body to accept that the evidence was now inside the system, not just inside my folder. Then another call came in. Mercer. His voice was different now, lower, tighter, like the air in the room around him had shifted. Kara, he said, your father just stood up and told the judge you were removed from security in handcuffs. I didn't gasp. I didn't swear. I just felt the blood move into my fingertips. Tell the judge the truth, I said. I am, Mercer replied. But wait. I heard muffled courtroom noise through the phone. A chair scrape, a cough, the hollow sound of a room that holds people to their words. Mercer kept his voice down. The judge is looking at what you sent. I stared at the call log packet on my tray table. Paper and ink, the least emotional thing in the world, and still the most powerful thing I had. Then Mercer whispered, he just asked the clerk to read your airport incident reference into the record. I closed my eyes for 1 second, because my father had tried to plant a story, and now the court was about to read the counter story out loud, with a number attached to it. I stayed on the line. I didn't speak unless spoken to. I listened to the room change through small sounds. The murmur quieted. Chairs stopped shifting. Someone cleared their throat and then went silent, like they remembered where they were. Mercer breathed once, controlled, like he was holding himself steady too. He's about to address it, Mercer said softly. And then I waited. I stayed on the line while the courtroom settled. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear enough to understand when the tone changed. A judge's voice came through the phone, older and even, not unkind. The kind of voice that doesn't need volume because the room already belongs to it. Counsel, the judge said. Before we address the calendar change and this motion, I'm looking at a supplemental exhibit containing an airport incident reference. I'm also looking at airline notes identifying the caller as Martin Bennett. There was a pause, and it wasn't the casual kind. It was the kind where someone realizes their plan is being read out loud. My father's voice rose next, too quick, like he was trying to get ahead of the facts. That's just what she wants you to believe, he said. She's manipulative. The judge didn't take the bait. Mr. Bennett, he said evenly, you are not under oath right now, but you are in a court of record. Choose your words carefully. I heard Mercer breathe in quietly through his nose. Not a laugh, just a controlled release, like he'd been waiting for the judge to draw the line. The judge continued, voice steady. I have an airport incident slip here that indicates Ms. Bennett was stopped, identified, and cleared to proceed. No arrest, no handcuffs, no detention for threats. Silence. I pictured my father standing in his suit, jaw tight, and my mother seated with her hands folded, ready to look worried. I didn't picture it for emotional effect. I pictured it because it helped me stay oriented. People are easier to manage when you keep them as facts. The judge turned back to the motion. I also have a declaration submitted with this request to proceed without Ms. Bennett, he said. It states she was removed from security in handcuffs due to threat-related behavior. Another beat, then the judge said flatly, that statement appears false. Mercer's voice came through the phone in a whisper meant only for me. He's reading their filing, The judge's tone sharpened slightly. "Counsel for Martin and Denise Bennett," he said. "Do you maintain this motion?" Their attorney spoke next, smooth and careful. "Your Honor, we filed in good faith based on information provided to our office." "Information provided by whom?" the judge asked. The attorney hesitated just long enough to be heard. "By our clients, Your Honor." The judge didn't rush. He let the answer sit there. "And your clients," he said, "appear to have initiated an airport police report and then contacted an airline to cancel Ms. Bennett's travel based on claims she was not safe to fly." I heard the faint sound of paper shifting. I pictured the judge looking down, then back up, methodical. My father spoke again, louder now, like volume could change a document. "We were trying to protect the public." The judge's reply came back colder, still controlled. "Protect the public from what exactly?" he asked. "A probate hearing?" That line landed with a quiet finality, not dramatic, just exact. The clerk began reading details into the record: the incident reference number, the timestamp, the reporting party's name. Hearing my father's name stated in that setting was different than hearing it at a service desk. In court, a name is not a relationship. It is an entry in a record. Then the judge said, "Ms. Bennett, are you present by phone?" Mercer moved the phone closer. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, voice steady. "I am on an aircraft in transit due to the interference described in my exhibits. I am available to be heard." The judge paused, then answered like he was closing a door my parents had been trying to wedge open all morning. "You are heard," he said. My chest tightened, not with victory, but with relief that the court was treating me like an actual party, not a rumor. The judge addressed the room again. "Given the credible evidence of interference," he said, "I am denying the motion to proceed without Ms. Bennett." I heard my mother make a small sound. It might have been a gasp. It might have been something practiced. I didn't try to interpret it. The judge continued. "I am also denying the request for temporary appointment as personal representatives at this time." Mercer whispered, almost to himself, "Good." My father tried again, voice strained. "Your Honor, the estate needs someone responsible." The judge cut him off without raising his voice. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "the responsible thing would have been to allow this hearing to proceed fairly. Instead, it appears you attempted to create an absence and then weaponize it." Silence returned, heavier this time. Then the judge said, "I am continuing this hearing to allow Ms. Bennett to appear in person. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. I stared at the tray table, smooth and plain, and felt the pace of the day change. Not faster, slower. Like the system had decided it would not be rushed. "If Ms. Bennett arrives sooner," the judge added, "counsel can address scheduling with the clerk, but I will not reward obstruction." Mercer exhaled quietly. I could hear it, and it sounded like control returning to the room. The judge gave a few additional procedural instructions, the kind that sound boring until you realize they are boundaries being built in real time. Then he said, "Court is adjourned." The line went quieter, then filled with small movements in chairs. People standing, paper gathering, that soft noise of a room returning to ordinary after something sharp has been said. Mercer pulled the phone away from the courtroom and lowered his voice. "Kara," he said, "stay where you are. Land safely. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow you walk into that courtroom with your documents and your head up." "I will," I said. "What happens now?" I asked, not emotionally, just practically. Mercer paused, like he was choosing words that wouldn't promise too much. "Now the record reflects what they tried," he said, "and tomorrow we proceed on the merits." I looked down at my folder, still open on my lap, the papers sitting there like quiet tools. I didn't say anything else. I just held the phone for a moment longer, listening to the empty air on the line after the courthouse noise faded. Then I ended the call, and I sat back in my seat and waited for the plane to land. The rest of the flight felt longer than it should have. Not because anything else happened. The cabin was ordinary. People watched movies, sipped coffee, asked for water. A baby cried for a few minutes and then stopped. The sun came in and out through thin cloud layers like it couldn't decide whether to show itself. What made it feel long was my own discipline. I didn't scroll through messages. I didn't reread the texts until my head spun. I kept my folder closed and my phone face down most of the time. Every so often I touched the edge of the paper inside my bag, just to confirm it was still there. Not as comfort, as a habit, like checking the lock on a door. When we landed, I didn't rush off the plane first. I let the impatient people go. I stood when it was my turn, stepped into the aisle, and walked out like I had nowhere to prove myself. In the terminal, I found a quieter corner near a wall outlet and called Mercer again. He answered quickly. "You landed?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm here." "Good," he said. "Tomorrow is still 9. The judge put it on the record that no emergency scheduling requests will be granted without notice to both sides. That part matters." I let that sink in. It was a boundary. A simple one, but it was something my parents couldn't slip around by whispering in the right ear. Mercer added, "The judge also directed their counsel to preserve and produce communications related to the airport report and airline cancellation. That includes call records if they have them." "What does that mean?" I asked. "In real terms?" "It means they can't pretend this never happened," he said. "And it means their attorney is now responsible for what was filed. If the declaration was false, the judge has options." I didn't ask him to name the options. I didn't need a list. I needed sleep and a clear morning. "I'll be there," I said. "Get to a hotel," he replied. "Don't stay with family. Don't meet anyone tonight. Keep your folder with you." "I already planned that," I said. He paused for a moment like he heard something in my tone he liked. Not pride, just order. "All right," he said. "Text me the hotel address, just for my notes, then put the phone down." I did exactly that. I booked a room in town, nothing fancy. A place with clean sheets and a front desk that didn't ask questions. When I checked in, I kept my voice steady, handed over my ID, and took the key card like a person whose life was normal. Upstairs, I locked the door and turned on the lamp beside the bed. I set my folder on the nightstand like it belonged there. Then I washed my hands for longer than necessary, not because they were dirty, but because I needed a small ritual that didn't involve anyone else. I took a shower. I put on a plain t-shirt. I laid my clothes out for the morning. Not stylish, just ready. Then I made tea from the little packet by the coffee machine and sat on the edge of the bed while it cooled. My phone buzzed twice. I didn't pick it up, not because I was being dramatic, because tomorrow would be a day for receipts and timestamps, not reactions. I slept with the folder on the nightstand and my keys beside it. I didn't sleep deeply, but I slept enough. In the morning, I woke before my alarm. The room was quiet. The light outside was pale and flat, the kind that makes everything look honest. I dressed without thinking too much. I ate half a banana from the lobby breakfast and drank coffee that tasted like hot water with ambition. Then I walked to the courthouse with Mercer's office address in my maps, even though I could have found it by following the flow of people in business clothes. At Mercer's office, he met me in the lobby with a folder of his own. He looked like he'd already been awake for hours. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask how I felt. He just looked at me and said, "You good?" "Yes," I said. "Then we go in," he replied. Walking into that courthouse with him beside me felt different than walking into the airport alone. Not safer, exactly. Just more structured, like there were rules in the air. Outside the courtroom, my parents were already there. My father, Martin, stood with his shoulders squared, speaking in a low voice to their attorney like he was giving instructions. My mother, Denise, sat on a bench with her hands folded over her bag. She looked up when she saw me, and her face shifted immediately into something soft and wounded. I didn't return it. I didn't glare. I didn't smile. I just kept walking. Mercer leaned slightly toward me and said quietly, "Don't look at them. Look at the clerk." So I did. When the doors opened, we went in and took our seats. The room smelled faintly of old paper and floor polish. The air was cool. The sound carried in a way that made even small movements feel loud. The judge came in and everyone stood. When we sat again, the judge looked down at the file and spoke first, voice even. "Before we proceed," he said, "I want to address scheduling and conduct." He looked over the top of his glasses, not at me, not at my parents, but at the attorneys. "Yesterday," he said, "this court received exhibits indicating that an airport report was initiated by Mr. Bennett, and that airline reservations were altered based on claims regarding Ms. Bennett's stability. The court also received a declaration claiming Ms. Bennett was removed from security in handcuffs." He paused. "This court does not appreciate being used as a landing pad for false narratives." The room went very still. My mother's attorney cleared his throat, like he was preparing to talk his way out of a corner. The judge held up a hand, small and firm. "I will hear from counsel," he said, "but first I am going to confirm something for the record." He looked directly at me. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "you are present in person today." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "And you were not arrested at the airport," he said. "No," I said. "I was stopped based on a report. The officers identified my father as the caller and cleared me to proceed." The judge nodded once like he was checking a box that should never have been a question. Then he turned to my parents' counsel. "Counsel," he said, "do you wish to withdraw the motion filed yesterday?" Their attorney stood. He was careful with his posture. He looked like a person who chooses every word as if it might be quoted later. "Your Honor," he said, "we filed based on the information provided by our clients. We acknowledge the court's concerns and we withdraw the motion." The judge did not thank him. He said, "Noted." Then he said something that made the air shift again. "Counsel will also provide to this court, by close of business today, any documentation your clients relied upon when making the statements contained in that declaration. That includes any communication with law enforcement or the airline, and any supporting notes your office maintained." Their attorney nodded quickly. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge continued, still calm. "If that declaration was knowingly false," he said, "the court will address it appropriately. This is not a casual matter." My father's jaw moved like he wanted to speak. He didn't yet. The judge moved on without letting the room drift. "Now," he said, "we are here on the estate of Marjorie A. Bennett. The decedent's will names beneficiaries. The court will proceed accordingly." He looked down at the paperwork again, then up. "Ms. Bennett is a named beneficiary," he said. "That is established. We will not relitigate her existence as a party." I felt something loosen in my shoulders, but I didn't show it. I just sat there, hands folded, the way you sit when you know you need to stay steady for the next hour. Mercer began, methodical. He laid out the timeline of filings, the will history, the contested claims about my grandmother's capacity. He didn't talk about my parents like villains. He talked about documents. Then he introduced the dispatch log. He asked to admit it as an exhibit related to the capacity dispute and to the timeline of my grandmother's final week. My parents' attorney objected, predictable, saying it was hearsay, that it didn't prove mental state. Mercer didn't argue emotionally. He didn't raise his voice. He just adjusted. "Your Honor," he said, "we are not offering it as a medical opinion. We are offering it as contemporaneous documentation of who initiated emergency response, who was present, and what was reported at the time." The judge considered, then nodded. "Admitted," he said. The clerk marked the exhibit. My father shifted in his seat. My mother's hands tightened around her bag strap, and then the judge asked a question that made the room go quiet again. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "I want you to answer directly. Why did you obtain this dispatch log?" I stood when I answered, because that's what you do in that room. Because my parents claimed my grandmother was confused and easily influenced when she signed the updated will, I said. And because the dispatch notes show who was with her when she needed help and who communicated with responders. The judge nodded and looked at the page. He didn't read it like a story. He read it like an instrument. Then he asked, "Counsel for Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, do you dispute the accuracy of this record?" Their attorney hesitated. Not long, just enough. "Your Honor," he said, "we do not have a basis to dispute the authenticity at this time." The judge looked back down. He tapped the paper once, lightly, like a person emphasizing a point without theatrics. "This note," he said, "indicates who made the call and who was present at the residence." My father's face tightened. My mother's eyes flicked toward him, fast. The judge didn't look at their faces. He looked at the record. Then he said, "The court will consider this along with the other evidence regarding capacity." He moved forward with the hearing, and that was where the true shift happened. Not in a dramatic sentence. In the way the judge stopped letting my parents control the tempo. Every time their attorney tried to speed past something, the judge slowed down. Every time a claim was made without support, the judge asked, "Based on what?" When my father tried to speak directly, the judge reminded him, "You will speak through counsel unless I ask you a question." At one point, Denise's attorney raised again the idea that I was unstable, that there were concerns for my well-being, that the family feared escalation. The judge's eyes lifted, and his tone didn't change much, but the room felt it anyway. "Counsel," he said, "we are not doing that. Not today. If your clients believe Ms. Bennett is a danger, they can pursue whatever legal route exists for that claim, with proper evidence and proper notice. They do not get to inject it into probate as a tactic." That was the moment I realized my parents had lost their favorite tool in that room. Not because the judge liked me, because the judge liked procedure, and they had tried to bend it. After a break, the judge returned and summarized where things stood. He did not issue a final distribution that day. He didn't need to. He did something more important in the immediate term. He appointed a neutral temporary administrator to handle urgent tasks, specifically to prevent either side from grabbing control while the court sorted out the contested issues. He set deadlines for disclosures. He ordered that no assets be moved without approval. He scheduled the next hearing with notice requirements that were explicit. Then, near the end, he addressed the interference again, like he was making sure it stayed attached to the record and didn't drift away as yesterday's drama. "Mr. Bennett," he said, looking at my father now, "your conduct in contacting law enforcement and the airline, and the submission of a declaration containing statements this court finds questionable, will be referred for review through the appropriate channels." My father started to speak. The judge held up a hand again. "Do not," he said calmly. "Not now." He turned to the attorneys. "Counsel will confer and provide the documentation I ordered," he said. "If it is not produced, the court will address sanctions." Sanctions, referral, deadlines, plain words, real consequences, no need for emotion. The judge looked down at the file once more, then up at me. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "you are a party to this matter. You will be treated as such. If there are future scheduling requests or emergency motions, they will be addressed with notice to both sides. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. He nodded once. "Adjourned," he said. Everyone stood. The room began to empty in that slow way courtrooms do, like people are still carrying the weight of what was said. Mercer leaned toward me as we gathered our papers. "That went how it needed to go," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. I just slid the dispatch log back into its sleeve and put it into my folder, careful with the corners. When we stepped into the hallway, the noise of normal life came back. Phones buzzing, footsteps, a clerk laughing softly with someone near the desk like nothing serious had happened 5 feet away. My parents came out behind us. I didn't turn to meet them. I didn't avoid them dramatically either. I just kept walking with Mercer until we were far enough that I could breathe without hearing them. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood on the courthouse steps for a moment, the sun on my face, the folder held close against my side. Mercer checked his watch. "I have to file a short notice with the clerk," he said. "Give me 10 minutes. Don't go anywhere. If they approach you, you say nothing." "I know," I said. He nodded once and walked back inside. I stayed on the steps, still, watching cars pass, watching a woman in a blue coat cross the street with a paper cup in her hand. And I waited. Mercer came back out with a single sheet of paper in his hand and a quieter look in his eyes. "Filed," he said. "It is simple, but it locks in what the judge ordered." I nodded. I didn't ask him to repeat it. I trusted the paper more than I trusted anyone's tone. We walked to a small cafe around the corner that smelled like toasted bread and burnt espresso, the kind of place where nobody looks up when you come in because everyone is busy being tired. I ordered tea. Mercer ordered coffee. We sat at a small table by the window. He didn't try to debrief my feelings. He spoke in steps, the same way he spoke in court. "Today established 3 things," he said. "You are a party. There is a neutral administrator, and the court is watching their conduct now." I stirred my tea until the spoon hit the side of the cup and made a small, steady sound. "What do I do next?" I asked. "Keep everything," he said. "Every message, every call, any change request. You do not speak to them alone. If they contact you, you keep it short and you keep it written. If they show up in person, you leave." I nodded again. Then he added, "And you change your airline profile settings and security questions today. Also your email password, anything they could use as a key." "I will," I said. He looked at me for a moment like he was checking something that mattered more than documents. "You stayed steady," he said. "I had a folder," I replied. He gave a small nod, like that answer made sense in his world. When we stood to leave, he said, "I will send you a clean summary of the orders and deadlines. Tonight, you do nothing but rest." I didn't argue. I didn't claim I was fine. I just accepted the instruction the way I accept a seatbelt, not because I like being told what to do, but because it keeps the day from throwing me through the windshield. Back at the hotel, I locked the door and set the folder on the desk. Then I did something simple. I washed my face, I hung my coat, I laid the papers out in neat stacks, not to obsess, just to return them to order. Incident reference, airline notes, dispatch log photos, court notices, a printout of the judge's new schedule and the name of the neutral administrator. I made a small list on the hotel notepad. Change passwords. Update airline profile to in-person only. Forward Mercer any new contact. Do not answer calls from unknown numbers. Then I put the notepad under the folder and stepped away from the desk. I made tea again, the same cheap packet, and stood by the window while the city moved outside. Cars, a couple walking a dog, someone jogging with earbuds in, people living ordinary lives. My phone buzzed once, a text from my mother. "We can still fix this if you stop making it ugly." I read it. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot, saved it into the same folder on my phone, and put the phone face down. Then I waited until my body remembered it was safe to breathe. That night, I slept without the folder on the nightstand. I left it on the desk instead. Not because I trusted the world, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I could sleep without holding the evidence like a shield. In the morning, I woke up and did the simplest things first. I took a shower, I drank water, I ate a plain breakfast. I changed passwords from a small table in the lobby, while someone behind me talked about ski conditions like inheritance did not exist. When Mercer emailed the summary, I read it once, then printed it. I slid the printout into my folder and closed it. Later that afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. It was a woman from the neutral administrator's office, introducing herself, confirming contact details, asking for preferred email. She sounded professional and tired, which was oddly reassuring. I called back and kept it brief. I gave her what she needed. I asked for the process in writing. She said she would send it. That was my new rule. If it matters, it gets written down. A few hours after that, I received a message from a cousin I barely spoke to. It was short. I heard what happened in court. I have something you should see. Call me when you are alone. I stared at that message longer than I needed to. Not because I was scared, because I recognized the pattern. Families do not just fight over money. They fight over what gets remembered and who controls the version of the story that survives. I didn't call my cousin right away. I took another screenshot. I forwarded it to Mercer. Then I went back to my room and folded my clothes like my hands needed something steady to do. That night, I went for a short walk around the block. Cold air, quiet streets, my own footsteps on the sidewalk. No court, no security line, no service desk. Just me moving through space without anyone trying to stop me. When I came back, I made tea again and sat at the small desk with the folder closed beside me. I didn't feel like I won. I felt like I reclaimed the right to show up and to be treated like a person in a room that mattered. If you made it to the end, tell me in the comments what you would have done. Would you have gotten on that plane anyway, or would you have turned back? Also, tell me what city you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you want more calm, real stories like this, like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it helps more people find a place to listen without feeling spun up. 2 of the most popular stories are coming up next, so stay close.